It has been a wonderful journey, and it has been a wonderful experience to be able to be ministering here in the city and to see the diversity and the opportunity that we have, especially to hear other stories and to hear perspectives from different and varying sides. And it's especially important in this day and age when we talk about reconciliation. What does reconciliation mean, and how does it pertain to us in our own journeys? Not only within the church, but in the community. And our own personal stories, our own personal journeys are also affected. So today we have a title that's been given as, now that we have reconciled, do we have reconciliation? A title with a question. So in this day and age of truth and reconciliation, it's more important than ever to speak of new hope and opportunities, to speak to reality and history, to reveal through dialogue bridges of healing and new journey, to walk with each other towards the horizon of peace and equality. But words can be like wind and air. So it takes a strong and gifted individuals to speak, to lead, to guide us so that we too might share in this vision of new hope. And so it is an honor and a privilege to introduce and prepare the way for Dr. Cynthia Wesley-Esquimeaux. Dr. Cynthia, I believe, I tried to play with words here, you got to appreciate this. Dr. Cynthia, I believe, is an academically inclined realist with a long view, hopeful vision of Indigenous need and concerns. Wow. I'll send it to you later on. She is personally connected and involved at the grassroots level and working to make changes in community and personally through individuals. She's a teacher, researcher, analyst, gifted speaker, and as we'll soon hear for ourselves, and for which we are gathered this morning. And from her profile and her capabilities and credentials, Dr. Cynthia Wesley-Esquimeaux is the former Vice Provost, Aboriginal Initiatives for the Lakehead University, and since 2016 in September, is the first Indigenous Chair on Truth and Reconciliation on behalf of the Lakehead University in Thunder Bay in Orillia. She also serves as an adjunct associate professor for the Faculty of Anthropology and research affiliate for the Center of Healthcare Ethics. Her research and academic writing is directed towards understanding the continual transmission of unresolved intergenerational trauma and grief primarily within the Indigenous communities of Canada. Dr. Cynthia is a board member for Healthy Minds Canada and the newly formed Teach for Canada nonprofit. She also sits as a member of the Governing Council of the National Research Centre in the University of Manitoba and has recently been inducted as an honorary witness by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. Her interest in environmental and humanitarian causes, she's actively engaged in a variety of initiatives across Canada and is an active and engaging media representative. Dr. Cynthia is a member of the Chippewa of Georgina Island First Nation in Lake Simcoe, Ontario, and has dedicated her life to building bridges of understanding between peoples. And this I understand, because that is the title that I've taken upon myself, is building bridges. She sees endless merit in bringing people from diverse cultures, ages, and backgrounds together to engage in practical dialogue and applied research initiatives, and is deeply committed to public education and active youth engagement. And in this, Dr. Cynthia has co-founded and chairs a youth project out of the University of Toronto, the University of Saskatchewan, and Lakehead University itself. So, in hope and in peace, I pray that you are encouraged by her voice and guidance this morning, that we together will be invited to hopefully take one more step onto the bridge of understanding and healing in the reconciliatory journey of life. And so, I wanted to keep mine short. Will you put your hands together as we welcome into our midst Dr. Cynthia Wesley-Esquimeaux.
That's why I'm so tired right now. Just busy all the time doing all kinds of things. So good morning, and thank you for coming out on a Saturday morning. It's great to see everybody. and spend some time with you. I have, these are, I'm going to just talk for a few minutes. The slides that I have are about the 94 calls to action, which of course is the part that we've reconciled ourselves to. That's about all we've reconciled ourselves to in some ways, in some places. We know we've said as a country, yes, we're going to pay attention to these 94 calls. They are not recommendations, they are actually calls to action quite deliberately from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. They said we can't just make recommendations because if you have an opportunity to do any research, you see that there are thousands, maybe millions of recommendations that have been made over the course of time since we've all come together on this continent, and by and large they've been pushed aside or set on a shelf, and nobody has really addressed them in any in-depth way. So we've decided this time that we're going to do a call to action, which means that somebody has to do something. And I think that we actually are doing things across the country, and I think that's an important piece that we should be discussing. So the whole question is, we don't have reconciliation yet. We have an open gate, I guess I would call it. We have an opportunity here to actually maybe make a change that's going to stick. And I'm very hopeful about that, especially since I live in a city like Thunder Bay, which has had some really deep challenges making relationships happen. And that's been it's a lovely place. I'm not saying it's a bad place to live, but if you have any opportunity to engage with police or with other kinds of officials, it isn't so pleasant for the Indigenous population there. And the kids that come into our city on a regular basis are very conscious of that. Because, unlike a city like Toronto, like if I walk down the street here in Toronto, people don't even really notice me. I just sort of blend in with everybody else, or maybe they speak to me in Portuguese or Italian, or they don't really know what I am, and they don't even bother to try to guess. But in a city like Thunder Bay, where there's very little diversity, it's very clear who is Indigenous and who is not. And so lots of our young people are walking down the street and are getting things thrown at them. And one young fellow came to me and he said, "I don't understand why people are spitting at me." And I said, it's got nothing to do with you, George. You're a perfectly wonderful young man. It's what you represent. It's what you represent. And that's the piece that we have to get to. You and I can reconcile very easily. You and I can have a conversation together, and it would probably be warm and wonderful and funny and all those things we want it to be. But what I represent and what you represent is something entirely different, and that's sort of the elephant in the room, and that's what happens in Thunder Bay. So I try to help him understand that he represents a long history, and it's taken us 600 years to get to this conversation, to talk about, well, what is it that we represent as we come forward and as we move about in the world and as we try to make friends with each other. And for all of us in this room, that's not really the issue. It's really what happens with the people that are not in this room that the question is. So Paul Martin put it to me this way. I was talking to him one day and he said, "This is the way I see it." He said, "This is not scientific," but he said, basically 40% of the population of this country is on side. 40% understands that there has to be a change, that they're going to do everything that they possibly can to be a part of that change. 30% of the population, they don't give a damn. They don't want to hear about it. It's, get over it, get a job, whatever, kinds of things that they have in their mind. And then 30% of the population is sitting on the fence. He said, forget the 30% in the middle. You're never going to change their mind. Don't waste your time. He said, go for the 30% that's sitting on the fence and help them understand what's going to be possible, and help them and work with them and help them join the 40%, and then you've got critical mass, and then you're more likely to move the kinds of things that you want to move forward. So, I said, well, that's pretty good advice. Because it's true, right? Many of us spend a lot of time in our lives trying to convince people of things that we want them to know or do, and they don't do it, and so we kind of go, So it's like, don't waste your time. Go work with the people that want to work with you, and then we'll probably be able to move this conversation forward a lot more quickly. So that's kind of where we're at. Now, it's the way I've kind of done it anyway. Working with students, and sometimes you have a captive audience. They have to be there, whether they want to be or not. I do a lot of work with the Ministry of Natural Resources and a lot of their conservation officers and their pilots and their people. And when I come into a room with 140 conservation officers, trust me, they're not smiling. They're like,
and you're probably the only woman.
Yeah. Well, there's a few good women in there too. But they're not smiling and they're not happy, and so it's up to me to bring that, sometimes I have, 3 or 4 hours, sometimes I have 2 days, depending on where we're at. And I have to bring them into this conversation in a way that creates those bridges that we're talking about, that invites them to walk across that bridge and understand where I'm coming from and join me in this conversation. And the only way I found to do that is to be able to help, is to sort of appeal to people's inner self, right? So I got 140 conservation officers in the room. When I say to them things like, 97% of the population of this country has experienced some form of trauma, and the other 3% are lying. And we all deal with trauma in various kinds of ways. We all find our thing that helps us move through the day, whether it's workaholism, you probably accuse me of that, right? Food, sex, different kinds of relationships, alcohol, substance abuses, all those things, right? And I can say to them, and I'm sure that those of you that are sitting in this room have different kinds of ways, and some of you are struggling with those same fears and those same pains and those same traumas as you walk into the room here today, and you're going to walk out of this same room with those traumas, just like many of our people have done and are doing every day. And as we start to personalize the conversation, they start to understand that we're all human beings having this experience, and that we all have similar pain, similar need, and similar reason to heal. And we start to have, and then we start to pull together, we start to have this conversation. I share with them, I remember, I can't remember if I was told or read, I've got so many things in my head all the time, but I remember it was about an elder anyway, who had been traumatized as a kid, who was a pretty serious alcoholic on the street person. And he said one day he got up and he walked down the street to his usual place where he would normally sit to get to beg for money or whatever, food or whatever. And he said, and as he walked down the street, he could see the pain in every single person he passed. He could see it. And he said, and I don't know what it was, whether the Creator was smacking me upside the head or whether, I somehow walked through a magic door, but all of a sudden I could see everybody's pain. And he said, and I realized that here I was, wrapped up in my own pain and trying to deal with that pain, and only seeing that is the most important thing when in fact everybody was experiencing the very same thing as I. And he said, and that's the last day I took a drink, and that's the day he started on his pathway to being an elder to healing. So we're all like that, right? So when we can see each other, I still remember being in Toronto years ago at the Friendship Center and working with a group of people and saying to them, I want you to, we were in a circle, I said, I just want you to close your eyes and I want you to look at each other. And they're all like, well, how are we looking at you? Close our eyes. Because I don't want you to look at people's faces and color and clothing and jewelry. I want you to look at each other from a spiritual standpoint. And I want you to look at the light that each person carries and brings into the room. And that's what I want you to see from now on when you start talking to people. I don't want you to look at them from a physical perspective. And you will see that we're all in this together. We're all here. We all have a light. Sometimes our light is brighter than others, and that's great. That doesn't mean you're better than anybody else. It just means you should hold it up so other people that are in the dark can find it. Right? That's what it means. Right? That's all. So that's where we want to start. I just wanted to say that I think it's important that we start to have these conversations, that we join in any possible way, whether you want to do it as a public speaker or whether you just want to reach out to people in your community, or whether you want to volunteer at the church or at a council fire or wherever you might be. That's what's going to be important for us as we move forward.